VA loan assumptions, pros and cons. Here we go. All right, first off, what's a VA loan assumption? A VA loan assumption is when a buyer assumes the existing mortgage from a seller during a purchase transaction. All right, so instead of coming in and starting a new mortgage at current market interest rates, they simply assume the existing mortgage. All right, big benefit here is that sometimes the rate tied to that current mortgage is much lower than current market interest rates. All right, it's a hot topic right now because a few years ago, people bought homes, they had 2.5% interest rates, 2.25%, 2.75%, whatever. And now rates are 6, 5.5, 6, 6.5, somewhere in that neighborhood. At any rate, they're saving a lot of money if you can assume that existing mortgage instead of starting a new mortgage. So other benefits, no appraisal or termite inspection needed. And lastly, the VA funding fee, the fee that goes directly to the VA to support this program, is only 0.5 point for a VA home loan assumption. Much lower than for a new purchase mortgage. If you have VA disability, it doesn't matter, you're not paying the VA funding fee in either case. All right, now for the disadvantages. Mainly these are for the seller. So this mortgage is still tied to the seller's credit after the assumption. All right, what needs to happen to protect the seller is they need to sign a release of liability. All right, if they can get that release of liability signed, then they're okay. But otherwise, if the buyer defaults on their mortgage down the road, long after this assumption is closed, then that's still a derogatory mark on the seller's credit because it's still tied to it. All right. Next, VA loan entitlement. Seller uses their VA loan entitlement to buy a house, and in the event of a loan assumption, their entitlement is still tied to that house. So they can't recoup it unless the buyer is a VA eligible buyer and has enough VA entitlement, then they can transfer it. All right, the VA can transfer entitlement if we have two veterans that both have eligibility, and you can transfer entitlement from the seller to the buyer. Otherwise, until that loan is either paid off in full or refinanced, the seller cannot recoup their entitlement and use it down the road for their next house. Okay, so that's a big thing to consider there. All right, probably the biggest reason why these things don't work a lot of the time is there can be a big difference between the purchase price and the current mortgage balance. All right, so basically what that means is you bought a house a few years ago. Last few years have been crazy for appreciation in a lot of the markets across the United States. You go to sell it today, and your house is worth $100,000 more, $200,000 more, $50,000 more, whatever. And at any rate, the buyer has to bring that difference to the table in one way or another. So if they have enough cash and they want to cover that difference in cash, then that's fine. But in a lot of cases, the difference between the current market value and the mortgage balance is a couple $100,000. Buyers may not have that just laying around, so they have to find a way to bring that to the table. And there are ways. You can get a second mortgage. Maybe you get a HELOC on another property that has some equity in it. So there are ways to do it sometimes, but a lot of times it's a deal breaker. So keep that in mind. The difference between the purchase price and the current mortgage balance, the buyer is responsible for providing that in one way or another. And it sometimes can be a big number. Okay, another disadvantage is a lot of times they take a long time to close. All right, if both parties on both sides of the transaction, if time isn't an object, then it doesn't matter. But a lot of times these things will take 3 or 4 months to close. So keep that in mind. And lastly, if you're interested in doing a VA loan assumption, it has to be done through the current mortgage servicer. Okay, so whoever is currently servicing that mortgage, they probably have a department that handles loan assumptions, and they have to be the ones that facilitate this transfer. That means you can't call your favorite loan officer to help you out with this. I can help you answer questions and see if it's going to be something that'll work, but I can't do the assumption for you. So the current mortgage servicer has to be the one that does it. So I hope that provides some context to VA loan assumptions. Sometimes they aren't all they're cracked up to be. I know 2 1/4 sounds great and everything, but hey, if you do hit all those and all those points, and that doesn't derail your loan assumption, then it can be a great deal for some people. Okay, but it has to be the right situation and the right fit. So anyway, Ray Northcutt here. If you have questions, and tell you what, if you've been on either end of a VA loan assumption, I want to hear about it. Drop it in the comments below. I want to see how your experience went, because a lot of times for one of the aforementioned reasons, these things don't work out. So I would love to hear cases of when it does. So, all right, guys, talk to you later. Bye.